Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for our Wellcome collection insights. I'm very, very proud and honoured to host Sophie Hannah tonight, who will be talking about a book that she wrote called Happiness, a Mystery. And to paraphrase the remarkable Ron Burgundy, I would say that Sophie is kind of a big deal. She's been translated into 49 languages. She is a multi-million copy selling crime novelist, runs a podcast, runs an MA. She's kind of makes me feel really lazy, quite frankly. And I'm really pleased that she was able to put this back, because this was meant to take place in the height of summer. But now we're in the glorious autumn, and really pleased to welcome her this evening. Just for those with any visual impairment, I am a white male with dark hair and glasses. I'm wearing a grey t-shirt against a white background. So I think if I go over to Sophie now, and perhaps Sophie, could you just describe where you are and how you look for our viewers that maybe don't have some visual impairment, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, I look ravishingly beautiful.
Second, yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't resist. No, so I am in my writing room in Cambridge. I live in Cambridge in a Victorian townhouse. So I'm sitting here in my writing room, and behind me there's a bookshelf with lots of Agatha Christie books on and lots of self-help books. And there's also a nice marble fireplace. And I'm sitting in a red chair, and I'm a white woman with brand new glasses. I'm wearing black framed glasses, which the lenses are completely scratch free because I only got them. I haven't had a chance to mess them up yet. And it's amazing. I can actually see through my glasses, which I realise is something that most people are able to do. But I haven't been able to. I realised when I got these new glasses that the old ones were so scratched that I basically might as well not have been wearing them. And I've got short brown curly hair.
Thank you, Sophie. And as a fellow glasses wearer, I can certainly relate to that. It's like every time I clean my glasses, I kind of, that's what it should be like, instead of looking at the world through kind of blemishes and smudges. So just before we really get going, I'd like to say, yes, Sophie's in Cambridge. My name's Danny, and I'm in a kitchen in the heart of Kent in Maidstone. And hey, where are you? So where is our audience tonight coming from? We'll be giving not one, but two prizes away. Both prizes are copies of the book, which I can thoroughly recommend. More on that later. But what we thought we'd give away tonight, a copy for the person who is furthest away from London, shall we say. And we will also be giving away a copy for the best question tonight. So get your thinking caps on. Think about a question that you'd like to ask Sophie. Forgive us while we both ramble on for a little while, and then we'll come to questions, maybe comments later. So yes, where are you from? Give us your name if you like as well. Right. This has been a long time coming, and I have to say it's been a long time since I read it, Sophie. But the best thing for me, and I'm a bit of a cynic to be honest, I'm not a big one for self-help books. But I would say get Sophie's book, because you practically don't need to read any other self-help book, because it's all there. Sophie, you're so honest, and I love the approach that you give. But before I keep going on, can I just ask you, I suppose, how did you come to write Happiness, a Mystery?
Well, it's actually an unusual book for me, in that I was invited by the Wellcome Trust to write it. So the Wellcome Trust has an exhibition there's always an exhibition, a sort of themed exhibition, and one was coming up on the subject of happiness. And Katie, who used to work at Wellcome and doesn't anymore, she knew that I had written a self-help book called How to Hold a Grudge. That was my first self-help book. And I wrote that book because I'd read loads of self-help books, and whatever the topic was, whether it was, how to cure a toxic relationship with your postman or how to be more motivated or whatever, there would always be a moment in every self-help book I read where the author would say, oh, and by the way, never hold grudges because that's just terrible and makes you feel awful. And every time I came across that bit in all these different books, I would think, I disagree with that. I've got loads of grudges and they all make me feel very jolly. I don't have any resentment or bitterness attached to them. They're just things I want to remember. Like, for example, I've got a grudge against Fred because whenever he comes to my house, he plays very loud music and wakes up my children, let's just say. So, like, obviously, I don't want to be consumed by feelings of bitterness that will ruin my emotional experience. But to me, the definition of a grudge is just something you want to remember about somebody. Like, they don't have a complete blank, clean slate in your mind. You want to remember that they behaved in that way or they continually behave in that way because that will inform your future decisions. And you might just think, oh, right, I've got that grudge about Fred, so I just won't invite him round when my children are asleep. Whereas if you never kind of remembered things people had done that you thought were highly suboptimal, if you just sort of like forgave and forgot and gave them a complete clean slate every time, you wouldn't really be able to curate your life experience in the way that I like to. So, so that was my first self-help book. So Kirty knew about that and she said, we're having this exhibition about happiness. Might you be interested in writing? Because they always commissioned a book to go with the exhibition. And I said, oh, that would be exciting. And then we had some meetings and it became clear that what was wanted was not really a self-help book particularly. And then I thought, oh, but I want to write a self-help book about how, because a lot of people are unhappy and worry about happiness and want to be happier. And I'm a self-help writer, so I want to do that. And then a really weird coincidence happened. Absolutely everybody involved in the project, apart from me, got pregnant and went on maternity leave at exactly the same time. And I was like, well, no one's here anymore, so I'm just writing the self-help book I wanted to write all along, and no one can stop me because everyone else is on maternity leave. So it was interesting because, if everyone hadn't got pregnant, I'm pretty sure that the book would have ended up being very different because, it was initially a commission and I like to try and deliver to people what they've asked for. But I also felt as though fate and destiny had given me this amazing opportunity to just write. Because I remember there were about 3 people who all went on maternity leave one after another. And they all said, right, we're going to hand you over to this new team. And I just thought in that moment, okay, this is destiny telling me to write the book that I'm burning to write about how we can all think about happiness in the best possible way, and I'm just going to write it and I'm just going to do it. And I did. And so that made the experience of writing the book really exciting. And I loved it because I structured it as a mystery. So before I became a self-help writer, I was for many, many years a crime writer. I still am a crime writer, but crime fiction is what I'm known for writing. And in more recent years, I'm known for writing Poirot continuation novels. Agatha Christie's family asked me to write a new Poirot novel in 2014, which I did, and I've written and published 3 more since. So when I was thinking, how do I want to approach writing a book about happiness, I decided I wanted to do it as a mystery, with me as the detective trying to solve the mystery of happiness. So that proved to be a really inspiring and useful frame and structure to have.
And Sophie, that's a really thank you for putting that so beautifully, because one of the things that struck me is you have such a lovely engaging and easy to read kind of summary of some of the great thinkers and what they had to say. So you kind of you do a beautiful kind of really easy to read overview, which kind of places the rest in context. But you also go to other people, and I love the fact that you kind of talk to what's the word, life coaches, would you say, or those that offer advice and guidance, and you use that.
Yeah. So well, I think in many ways my book is quite unusual, because I've got a chapter where I summarize what some of the great philosophers thought and said about happiness. So Aristotle, Schopenhauer, trying to think who else, Kant, in my book I call them the big boys. Like, this is what the big boys thought about happiness. But then I have another chapter where I go into detail about what all the most prominent life coaches in America think about happiness. And there's probably not that many books that talk about Kant's views of happiness alongside Brooke Castillo's, but I'm proud to have written the first one, because, in a way, I'm a coach myself. I coach writers in my Dream Author program, and when I listen to other coaches talking about their outlook on life and their views about how we can be most happy, it is philosophy. It's their philosophy and approach to life. So I was really pleased that my book contained great philosophers and great life coaches.
And I have to say, and I'm quite picky over books that are meant to be funny. I did genuinely laugh out loud, because there was some really, really funny anecdotes there involving your dog, and I was laughing on the train. So thank you.
I can't actually remember what I said about the dog in the book.
I think it's something to do with a packet of food.
Okay.
It's. I think you had these lovely sort of asides, and what was for me was one of the nice things was you were so open and honest, and you because I'm reading it trying to find a little bit about who is Sophie Hannah, and by reading this I certainly got a really good impression of someone that's really thoughtful, but just seemed to share my sense of humour. So thank you for that. So Sophie, you did start, and it's a kind of journey, and I suppose you've talked to how the difference is between, say, this and crime novels. But would you say, comparing it to, say, a crime and mystery, that we all have a kind of innate pleasure in solving puzzles or having a puzzle given to us?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we all do, but I think plenty of us do, and I think that's why crime is the most popular genre, which it is. I mean, it used to be one of the most popular genres, but recent data, I believe, has put it in top position. And I think it's because we love mysteries, especially with the promise of a solution, which obviously fictional mysteries have. And I think the reason we love mysteries so much is because so much of our motivation in our lives is mystery and solution based. We often take actions that we take or do things that we do in order to know what's going to happen. And we often in real life don't know what's going to happen. So we go for a job interview to see whether we can get the job. That's one mystery. Then if we get the job, will we like the job? That's another mystery. Then we have the job interview and then the panel don't get back to us for a couple of days. That's another mystery. Do they hate me and not want to employ me, or have they just all gone on a skiing holiday? So in our real lives, we're constantly puzzling over stuff, and there's almost never a guarantee that we will find out what we really want to find out. But in crime fiction, we get that same mystery with a guarantee that we will get a solution. Yeah,
thank you. I'm gonna slide my eyes over to the side now, because thank you for those that have responded. We've got people joining us from Pennsylvania, Johannesburg, the UK, Athens, Banstead, hi, Vancouver, and Virginia. So That's quite a good spread, I have to say, so far. And we see, right, I'm going to dive into the questions to help me along here. A question from Sydney in Canada. Will your new understanding and insights on happiness inform how you write your future crime fiction projects? Will the characters be searching for happiness through crimes and other exploits? Wow.
I mean, that's a great question. I think indirectly, definitely there will be a relationship. You know, all the different strands of work that I do feed into each other in subtle ways. And in fact, my next Poirot novel, number 5, I'm just developing the story for it at the moment, and it is definitely influenced by some of the other non-fiction work I've done. Not specifically the happiness book, but other bits of my coaching and self-help work. So, since writing the happiness book, I have been more consciously thinking about the role of happiness and people's relationship to it and people's different ways of pursuing it and people's sensible and foolish ideas about it. So yeah, it all feeds back in to the fiction, I think.
Sophie, here's a question I've been dying to ask you. What's your motivation? Because you have really been at the absolute top of your profession. You know, you're very commercially successful, which must feel good. So you've been acknowledged, you've been recognised. You know, the family of Agatha Christie approached you. You're running a course. What do you get back from that? What are the things that kind of give you that sense of satisfaction?
I think, you know, I get lots and lots of messages from readers. So partly on social media, but mainly emailed to me via my website. So I know that there are loads of people who love the books and are waiting for the next one. And I just like reading a great book is one of the best and most meaningful experiences I can have in my life. And so to be able to create that for thousands, you know, or hundreds of thousands of people to enjoy feels to me like a really amazing purpose for my life to have. And I think that more and more when, you know, because I think there's my dog is here. He seems to be trying to stand on my handbag and I'm not sure why. What do you do? During the pandemic, during the first lockdown, I suddenly found that I was reading in a different way. I was like, I just want to get so much enjoyment and meaning from books, because when lockdown first happened, a lot of the things that I would have normally done, suddenly I couldn't do. And reading was just it suddenly became the most important thing. I remember thinking in the first lockdown, books really are the most important thing. We can enter other worlds and get sort of psychological sustenance from them. And I, in particular, had a sort of phase of like obsessively reading all of Agatha Christie's Mary Westmacott novels. So those are the novels she wrote that weren't specifically crime. And I'd never read them, shamefully. I thought, oh, well, they're not in the name Agatha Christie, so they're not real Agatha Christie's. And at the beginning of lockdown, I thought, I'm going to make it my project to read all the Mary Westmacott novels. And it was just amazing. And I remember thinking, the pandemic is kind of a time of national and international crisis. What am I reaching for and getting most support from? I mean, my family was the main thing, but books were the next thing. They were the very next thing. And other writer friends of mine were saying things like, oh, I feel so useless. I just write frivolous novels while people are there, you know, in hospitals, saving people's lives. And I felt the opposite. I was like, wow, this pandemic has revealed to me how important books are. And then I thought it again when I personally had COVID myself. Oh. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. It wasn't fun.
Oh,
so I had COVID and I felt, I mean, I was never in any danger. My breathing was always fine, but I felt extraordinarily tired and weak. And also a symptom that isn't often talked about with COVID, but everyone I've asked said, yeah, I had that too. I felt really kind of emotionally weird. Like I felt very miserable and morbid and needy and just not like me at all. And once again, books were what I wanted. Books were what I relied on. I just lay in bed for 10 days reading book after book, and it really helped me. So yeah, I feel as though writing the books that only I could write, because no one can write the books that you would write, and I couldn't write the books someone else would write. So all of our books are unique if we're writers, and I feel as though producing those books and contributing that to the world is kind of one of my main kind of life purposes. So that's what motivates me.
Wow, that's beautifully put, Sophie. Yeah, I like you. The dog's excited. I found myself going back to my favourite books and reordering, because I said, but one of my favourites is Hemingway's like kind of unpublished one called The Garden of Eden, and I found an old copy. It was a paperback, but it was the one that I had. It was from the 80s. It was falling apart, so I actually invested in a hardback. Yeah. And I just thought, this is a real. It felt like both a sort of bit of a luxury, but also it's like, no, I want this book and I want to keep it and have it in the future. So I wanted a decent copy. But so true. Yeah, I think you do find that sort of solace. Thank you. We've got another question coming in. Have you changed anything in your life as a result of learning more about happiness? And on the back of that, could I maybe cheekily prompt you I'm keen to talk about time, because that was a real thing that came up in the book was time.
Have I changed anything in my life as a result of learning more about happiness? Yeah, and it actually ties in with the time question. So I'm always involved in an ongoing experiment to schedule and manage my time better, because I'm very ambitious about how much I want to do. People have been saying to me for years, just do less. I don't really want to do less, because I'm at the point now I only do things if I think, oh, I'd love to do that. I don't do anything that I don't want to do. But I want to do a lot of things, and sometimes it's hard to fit everything in. And I also don't like to be frantic and dashing around. I prefer to be relaxed and have a nice calm energy. So I've been doing quite a lot of like being happy about wherever I'm at with the scheduling experiment. So I still try and plan my time, and I think I'll get these 10 things done today and those 10 things done tomorrow. But if I don't manage to do them all, I now understand the importance of not beating myself up about that. So I think if I had to answer the question succinctly, what I've learned is that there are certain things I can do that just improve my levels of happiness and make me happy more often, increase my overall feeling of happiness and how often I feel happy. There are certain really basic measures I can take. One of them is if I plan or schedule something and then it doesn't happen and I don't quite do what was my target, instead of going, oh no, I haven't done, I just think, oh well, I still did brilliantly. I didn't do all 10 things, I did 8 of them. That's still brilliant. The world isn't going to end. I've pretty much stopped altogether beating myself up about anything. Like if I've done something wrong, instead of like regretting it and why did I do that? I'm just like, I did it. If I had my time again, I wouldn't do it, but I did do it. So I just will accept that. And then if I need to apologize for anything, I do. And I put things right if I can, but I basically move on rather than I waste no energy on guilt, regret, lamenting the past and like arguing with the past, because it's not going to change, right? Yeah. So we might as well think, I accept that happened, now what? And a lot of this is in the book, right? There are a lot of this in this book. But yeah, there's just certain things that we can do. So I wouldn't like to stop trying to plan what's going to get done when. Yeah. But for me, I'm kind of evolving and developing this method, which is like I plan, I schedule, I accept that it won't work quite a lot of the time, but I'll still get lots of things done, and that'll do.
You're very busy, so I'm just glad you could fit this in as well. So while I'm sitting on more questions, but let's have a think. Oh right, yes. I was going to put to you. So on that, so I suppose on that subject, what are a few of your favourite things? Just to sort of get a bit of an insight here, because obviously
I can easily tell you. Yeah.
I know swimming is a good one.
Swimming. I adore swimming. I adore having deep tissue massages. Love it. And they're quite painful, but my neck and back get quite stiff, so I need pressure and I need those knots to be massaged out. So I love that. I love reading a gripping book, whether it's a crime novel or a self-help book. That's mainly what I read. Absolutely love watching TV in the evening with my husband. Every night after dinner, if we're both in, we will watch an episode or two of whatever drama we're watching. At the moment, we are re-watching the whole of Breaking Bad. It's so brilliant. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, it's on Netflix. I strongly recommend it. So that makes me happy. Seeing friends, socializing, going to nice restaurants with my friends, love doing that. I've got a bit of an obsession with 5-star hotels with lovely swimming pools. Partly for the swimming thing, but I just I love staying in nice hotels. And in fact, Miriam told us that one of the people on this call is from Athens. So I will tell you that I recently, like early September, I stayed in only one night. I wish I could have stayed longer, but I was on my way to somewhere else. But I stayed a night in the Hotel Grand Britannia in Athens, which was just heaven. So I'm planning to go back there at some point quite soon.
You're after my own heart here. I mean, yes, who can't beat a really nice hotel? Very lucky where I work, because if you get sent on a conference or something like that, the meetings and travel team kind of automatically put you up somewhere really nice that I couldn't afford, and it's great, isn't it? It's just like you're living that sort of fantasy life, aren't you? It's great.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I always, if I have to do an event, if I have to stay anywhere, very often the event organizers will say, "Oh, we've booked you a room in this hotel." I now tell everyone, don't choose my hotel. I want to choose my hotel, and if it's more than the allocated budget, which it always is, then I'm happy to pay the difference myself.
That's very good of you. We've got a question from Tina. Oh, interesting one. What is a moment when you were most happy and why? A moment you were most happy and why?
The moment when I found out that my first crime novel was going to be published. I was on a train on the way to do some work in Bath. Bath is a city in England. And I was on a train travelling from West Yorkshire, where I lived at the time, to Bath. And my mobile phone rang, and it was my literary agent saying that Hodder had made an offer of publication for my first crime novel. And I was just on cloud 9. and then I got happier and happier throughout the day, because I immediately said, "Oh, say yes, accept the offer." And my agent said, "Well, no, I'm going to ask for more money." And I was like, no, just say yes. He's like, "Don't worry, the offer's not going to go away." And then he got a bit more money, and then he got a bit more money. So I was even happier by the time the day ended.
And one of the lovely things, I suppose, is, I'm getting a bit philosophical now, but when you've got something that's printed, because I work in a library, there is something that's going to really outlive you. It's going to be a legacy. It's going to be something that people will be reading in the future. I know you've also had poetry studied at GCSE, I believe, or schools as well. Is that an extra thing?
Do you know? I mean, my poetry is still studied on various GCSE syllabuses. Yeah, no, it's true. But I never think about that. Like, I never think about things like legacy or that people might read my books when I'm dead. I mean, like, thinking about it, yeah, my books won't all disappear the minute I drop dead. So hopefully people will read them after I'm dead. But it's just not something that ever occurs to me. It's more about, like, what do I want to create in the world while I'm in it, you know?
Yeah. So could I ask, now you were I had a sneak peek in the books as I was going through the bookshop this morning, and you were very generous as well. You acknowledged people that had inspired you. Who could you give us a few of your, I know it's impossible really, a question, but some of your favourite books maybe, or some of your favourite authors?
In terms of crime or
I think just generally that those that really give you a bit of a glow and you come back to maybe.
There's all kinds of people. So on the crime fiction front, obviously Agatha Christie is my great hero. I also love Ruth Rendell. She's probably my second runner-up crime writing hero. I love poetry as well. So I love the poets Edna St. Vincent Millay, who's a famous American poet. I've read her poems non-stop when I was younger, and I know them all by heart. And a contemporary poet called Wendy Cope, who is amazing. So they have both inspired me a lot. On the self-help front, I mean, I mainly am inspired by these people via their podcasts, although I have read a couple of books as well by my top self-help hero, which is an American life coach called Brooke Castillo. She is the founder and creator of the Life Coach School, and she runs a coaching program called Self-Coaching Scholars. She certifies coaches. I did her certification when I was becoming a coach, and she's just amazing. And I would strongly recommend that if you've never heard of Brooke Castillo, listen to her podcast. The podcast is called The Life Coach School, and start from episode 1. Don't, whatever you do, start now with the most recent episode, because there's a kind of evolution. She starts with the basics and then she goes on to all these other things. But that podcast was life-changing for me, and she talks all the time about happiness and how we should think about it and how we should all think and behave in order to have the best lives possible. So I would strongly recommend that podcast.
Thank you. You've kind of started on this, but a question from Georgia. Can you tell us more about your creative process researching and writing about happiness?
Yeah, so basically I kind of feel as though I've been researching happiness for my entire life in various ways, because I have always, like, not always, but since I was quite young, read books about how we can improve. You know, my taste for self-help books, I don't know where it came from. I didn't know anyone who recommended self-help books. I just sort of developed that interest. So it's kind of been an ongoing research project even before I knew I was going to be writing a book about it. And in terms of the research for the book, I just did a lot of reading, talking to people, and listening to podcasts. Those were the three areas that went into my research. Because when you talk to people, you realise that everyone has such a different take on it, you know. There's a lot of people. I was at a party the other night and someone was telling me that, you know, now the state of the world now is worse than it's ever been. And I was like, oh, I can imagine you might be a bit unhappy if you really believe that. And I said to him, like, I just don't think that's true. I look around and see many ways in which things are better than they've ever been. And he said, yeah, but what about this? And what about this? And what about that? And I was like, yeah, but at any time in world history, somebody could have said, what about this one? I mean, there's never been a time in the world where everything was lovely for everyone. So, yeah, it's interesting. I like sort of getting different people's takes on it.
Thank you. Oh, this is one. And thank you, Brent, for asking this question, because it touched on something that was, again, a real central point of your book, Sophie. Do you think happiness comes from circumstances or attitude?
Well, I'm so glad to be asked that question. So, remember Brooke Castillo, who I mentioned a minute ago? I basically completely agree with her take on this question. And her take on this question is that our feelings, so happiness is obviously a feeling, an emotional state. Brooke believes and teaches, and I completely agree with her, that our feelings are not created by our circumstances. They are created by the thoughts we have in response to the circumstance. Now, that often feels like the circumstance is creating our feelings, right? Because if someone, for example, punches us on the nose, we are for sure going to find ourselves thinking outrageous, or danger, or this is horrible, or that shouldn't have happened. And so we're going to feel angry and unhappy. But it's the thought that creates the feeling, not the circumstance. So, for example, when I go for a deep tissue massage and I spend an hour and a half, because I go for 90 minutes, I spend an hour and a half having pain caused to my body, and then I have to pay 100 quid for it or whatever, I'm really happy about that, because while the pain is being inflicted, I'm not thinking, help, someone's attacking me and it hurts. I'm thinking, oh, I'm paying someone to cause me this pain in order to detangle the knots in my back, and that will do me good. And so I'm really glad this is happening. And that's the perfect example. You know, somebody causing you physical pain. If you think, help, this shouldn't be happening, then you're going to feel unhappy. If you think this should be happening and I've paid for it and I'm enjoying every minute of it, then you're not going to feel unhappy. So yeah, absolutely, not circumstances, but thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sophie, what I'd like to propose is, because I know that you're so busy and I'm so grateful that you were able to do this again, I'd like to try and give you about 20 minutes of your life back by finishing this fairly early, because I'm so glad we covered all the things that I felt were really important. Before we get to the giveaways and the prize and wrapping up, I just want to say that this was genuinely such a unique book. It was such a unique experience to read it and to go through your journey with you. I genuinely think it's a very valuable book because of what you summed up, and very, very deep thought. This isn't no way is this a sort of superficial book about happiness. It really does ask some very big questions, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody. So just before we wrap up, we're going to do the fun bit. So I'm going to have to go and consult my atlas to find out exactly where out of those places are furthest away from London, because my geography is appalling. But Sophie, could I invite you to perhaps try and judge the best question? And if you can contact us, then we'll send it off to you. What do you think was a good question there?
I'm going to go with Brent's question about circumstances or attitude.
Thank you very much. Well, Brent, we'll contact you. I hope we've got your email somewhere, and we'll get a copy of Sophie's fantastic book to you. And also we'll be getting one off to whoever's furthest away, whether that's Vancouver or Johannesburg, who knows. Gosh, I really need to do some brushing up with my geography. So yes, we're going to finish a bit early, but I think, it's Monday night. I'm getting near the end of my nuts now. Sophie, did you manage to sneak a few? No, you didn't manage any of your.
I had them before we started.
Yeah,
I didn't want to eat during the event.
I'm a complete unprofessional. I was sitting there snacking away, but I thank you. That was lovely. That was such a delight. You're so easy to talk to.
It's been really interesting, and thank you to everyone who's joined and asked a question, and thanks for coming along.
So, without further ado, well, good luck, Sophie. I'm going to go off. There's a couple of books I've got my eye on now that I'm going to go and get from my local bookshop and thoroughly enjoy them. I love a good crime novel, and my hat's off to anyone who can come up with anything vaguely original when so much has been written before. Absolute pleasure. And Sophie, thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you think the book was original, because there's lots of self-help books out there, and there's lots of books about happiness out there, and I do think mine is, well, some might say very eccentric and weird, but it is at least original.
Well, here's to eccentric and weird. Sophie Hannah, it's been a pleasure. You're an absolute star, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.